now. All right, everyone. So thanks for joining us for our second film under quarantine. My name is John Lyons. I'm the Director of Programming for the Film Society of Northwestern Pennsylvania. And this week's film is The Whistlers, which is a unique crime thriller with a little bit of comedy from writer-director Corneliu Porumboy. And yeah, let's meet our panel and see what we thought about the film.
I'm Erika Berlin. I'm the Executive Director of the Film Society. I'm also one of the podcast hosts for Film Green. So I put the little logo up there. You can find it out wherever you get your podcasts. Should I start talking now or are we moving around? Because I feel like everyone needs to introduce themselves first.
Yeah, we'll introduce.
Okay, yeah, good.
I'm Jesse Olszewski. I'm the project coordinator at the Greater Erie Film Office.
And I'm Stewart Nash. I am the director of the Greater Erie Film Office.
And I'm Mike Berlin, Erika Berlin's husband.
Boom.
Fantastic.
Vanko is here.
John Vanko. So, all right, this is from the director of Police Adjective from 2009, which was a big indie hit. It cleaned up the awards at the Cannes Film Festival that year. That film also starred Vlad Ivanov, who is the lead actor in this film. You may recognize him. I recognized him from Snowpiercer. Not sure if you guys.
Oh, I thought so. Yeah.
All right. Okay. He was one of the bad guys.
Yes. So, yeah, I was. So I have to say, I hated Police Adjective, the director's Cannes darling film. The Whistler, or The Whistlers, I liked a little bit more, but I still felt it was lacking quite a lot. I'm curious to hear what the rest of the panel has to say about the film, and then we'll jump into open discussion about it. So what do you got, Erika?
Well, okay. I also was not impressed with this movie. When following along when a movie is in multiple languages, because it wasn't even just in Romanian, it was in English and Romanian and Spanish. And it introduced so many characters, and some of them were completely unnecessary to the plot. Like they gave them title cards when they were not important characters at all. So that was confusing to me. I would see a title card for a character's name and I was like, well, what's going on with that? I was so curious about the costuming for this that the costumist actually was talking about how Gilda, her red dress, she's wearing a red dress in the first two scenes she's in. Her title card is also red because the costumist wanted each title card to follow Roy G. Biv. Like she wanted it to be red, orange, yellow, green. Like that was something she wanted to do. So Gilda was in a red dress and her title card was red. I thought that was the lamest thing I ever read. I mean, Roy G. Biv, this is like elementary school. That's how you learn the rainbow. I wasn't impressed by that. It didn't seem to have like a lot of real meaning behind it. So that's where my research about this movie started, in Roy G. Biv land. It kind of went downhill from there. But anyway, I think I've said this on previous podcasts, like when movies go from, like The Spy, we were talking about the movie The Spy, when a movie has like tons, yeah, it's like kind of bland color palette, multiple locations, multiple time frames, and then you add different languages on top of that you kind of have to adjust to. Like, I was so confused. On top of it, the plot didn't really make a whole lot of sense. It seemed like the whole movie was wrapped around this gimmick of learning how to whistle to do this whistling that they do on a remote island, a remote Spanish island, which it's a real thing. It's called Silbo Gomero. It is it's a registered, a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2009. It's a real thing. It just seems like it's such a gimmick to name your movie after that and make such a big deal about going to Spain and learning it when you barely use it. And it's not that important. I mean, there are other ways to achieve what you did without filling up your plot with having to go to Spain when it was really unnecessary.
So you liked it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Erika, I couldn't agree with you even more, except this movie, which I never do this. I mean, it was so bad, I started taking notes. I mean, I literally, all right, well, first of all, I got 46. Well, first of all, I want to thank Magnolia, because I thought this was really cool that they sent these screeners out to us. And the fact that my screener had expired, and all of a sudden I just said, oh, send a new one, and boom, the screener was right there. So then I had to rewatch the final half. So I did go back and I watched the end of the movie from 46 minutes on. But I'm sitting there at first and I'm like, man, this is flat, this is dull, and this is boring. And I'm like, here's one thing.
In that order.
Yeah, pretty much. Why would the mother, and I'm going to give, this is spoiler time here, okay? Why would the mother give the money to the church without even saying a word? To anybody. Oh, I just donated. And
For
the way
God.
she said, yeah, I just donated it.
For the Lord.
And they cut to
with
him.
the cigarette.
Yeah.
With the
Why would
cigarette.
you do that? Because, it was just like, it was stiff. One thing I thought was good, which I was like, all right, this is cool. This is getting cool. They have this German version of Mac the Knife.
Yeah.
I don't think I had heard it in a long time, but I was like, what is this tune? I can recognize it. And I was like, all right, so it's taking a little bit of a turn here. But then all of a sudden, the jumpy edits. I mean, we were all over the place, like you said.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we're in an interrogation room. No one's reacting. And when I say acting, I mean acting, no emotion whatsoever. And then our lead character just goes and smacks the one guy he's interrogating across the face.
Well,
Because they were in on it.
Yeah, they were working together.
Okay, like I said, I was lost.
I had to ask Mike. I had to ask Mike what was going on. It's like, see, he's acting. And then Magda, who is the police chief, who's also crooked, she says, she takes him out in the hallway and was like, I know you're acting. And then
well, all right. Well, Christy's playing both sides. I mean, I did that, but it was just like, I don't know, maybe just because the tone was set and I was already in the mood where I was like, all right, I'm going to rip this thing a new one. And also I'm thinking to myself, this is, like I said, John's forgiveness here. I thought he watched this first and it said, oh, you guys should watch this. It's really good. But you did not watch this, which that's your only saving grace on this one, John.
Yes.
Hey,
So I'll finish up here. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of people like this film. So far, it sounds like our panel is not on the
not on the up. All right, it wasn't even
side, but
more than halfway into the movie too. Someone finally whistles. I think at least you get the gist of what whistling is all about. And then I was thinking, okay, yeah, is this whistling stuff even real? Which it is, because I researched that. I thought one of the best parts of the movie was when John Wayne was on screen. I guess you have to see the movie to see that part. And then what else did I have here?
Can you name what John Wayne movie that is?
Rio Bravo? No, what was that?
The Searchers.
That was a John Ford, though. I knew that. I could tell by just watching it. It was gorgeous. But I'm like, wait, I want to watch that. In the same, what did I hear? Oh, yeah. Oh, and then they go, okay, this is one part I think it was Christy and Magda. They're sitting there having this conversation at this one scene. And the next scene, heavy on dialogue too, really long. And then the next scene is the two of them at a different location having more dialogue about what they could have just been talking about at the last. I'm like, did we just switch locations with the same two actors without any progression of storyline and we're still talking?
Yeah.
Rant over.
All good.
Well,
Jesse?
If I had to sum up the movie in 2 words, it would be maximum dryness. The language didn't bother me. I was able to follow the plot. There was the cross that was meant to set up the double cross that was meant to set up the triple cross. I mean, yeah, sure, that's fine. It just seemed that the direction to all the actors was you're not allowed to react in any way.
Yeah.
People are like, here's $1 million. And they're like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to kill this person. I understand. I just couldn't tell who cared less about the plot, me as the viewer or the people in the plot.
Well, I think that's probably a result of Romanian cinema really just coming out of communism, and they haven't really been at it for very long. I mean,
what, emoting?
Yes, because all they learned growing up in Romania, you're watching like communist propaganda. That's all they did. That's all they made was like documentary and newsreel. And that was what people consumed. Once communism hit, that was it. So it was a little depressing, I bet. It was a little dry.
I bet
Maximum dryness.
I bet you people in Romania have seen other people smile and laugh. I think they're probably familiar with the concept.
In movies.
And it's complete loss in translation, too, because whatever sounds the language that originated the whistle sounds, I would like to see the comparison there, because obviously English does not translate with the whistling.
Right, it's Spanish.
Well,
but it adds in the...
Yeah.
Well, the only time Gilda actually talks in this whole movie for any amount of time is when she's at the chalkboard showing, like, there's additional consonants and there's additional, vowels, and she does this little...
Which was interesting because she says all that in English, but she's teaching Spanish words.
She also moans quite a bit.
Yeah. She
that was the only redeeming quality of the film.
Mike Berlin, initial thoughts.
That was the only thing he could talk about when we were talking about the movie is Gilda.
Well,
the full frontal.
How could you not?
All right. So I don't love the movie, but I think sometimes, in fairness, I'll try to play devil's advocate and play some defense for the film. Sometimes you have to think about movies and film and cinema in context of where they're coming from in the era that they are being produced. And if you go back and like give some historical context, this is a total sort of not biting, but like a total homage to the neo-noir film movement and stuff like that. And if anybody knows anything about film noir and stuff like that, it's really plays off of some tropes of like the jaded protagonist, which you've got in Christie, and then the femme fatale, and then convoluted plots all over the place. And if you sort of put in context something like Romania trying to enter the free market and coming out, as Erika said, of capitalism, they are dealing with a situation where it's just like, a lot of these plots, whether it be something like 1945 Open City, that's a Luigi Ferrari movie after Italy had been shelled in World War II and stuff like that, or even something like Orson Welles' Third Man, or you can take something Chinatown, or Arthur Penn's Midnight Rider. These are times that are like that culturally are tumultuous, and so you have, in context, Romania is coming out and trying to join the free market. And here is the main character, the protagonist, Christie, who has, now we don't really get enough of his backstory for this to mean anything to the audience, but you have the main character, Christie, who is probably representative of some Romanians' better judgment and stuff like that, but trying to keep up now with the first world sort of capitalism and standard that has been set. So the film does play, from a contextual standpoint, into some like actual like hardcore cinema tropes. Now I didn't enjoy it. It doesn't have enough exposition and all that kind of stuff. But I think that there might be a little bit more happening, than meets the eye.
There was a lot of homage.
A lot of homage.
You know what's worse than a bland neo-noir thriller?
Two?
A bland riff on one.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, yeah, it just didn't add up. I mean, like Erika said, it all comes down to even the details of the Roy G. Biv. Erika, you saying that just it just seems to fit. It just seems to fit. Like the whole style of the film is like.
That makes me think of the Clue board game. All the colored characters.
Yeah.
But that's not a substitute for like an empathetic protagonist.
Yeah, it's like an inside joke on I don't know, like such an inside joke on maybe just the small crew that the filmmaker hangs out with or something like that. Like maybe they're all laughing, uncontrollably and think that this is the funniest thing they've ever done.
Or maybe if you're a Romanian film viewer, maybe it just feels different. Maybe because it's it's something like if we were watching a movie that was made by I don't know, a guy in Erie, Pennsylvania. I mean, if anybody knew a guy in Erie that was making movies, like we would feel a sense of like pride for like this Pennsylvanian, this American. I don't know, maybe if you're a Romanian, you see it differently, you're picking up different cultural nuances that make it a more European film and more palatable for Europeans.
But this movie has a lot of positive reviews from not Romanian people.
Yeah, it's not
I don't understand.
We can't make the excuse that it's just a Romanian thing. It's just a style that
perhaps I could almost relate with what Erika said. If you could maybe say it was going to be like North Koreans, if like say their their dictatorship fell and all of a sudden they were westernized, what would their filmmaking look like?
Yeah, well, it was called Delightful, a delightful Romanian twist on Ocean's 11. So
That's
that is
Ocean's 11.
Did they see Ocean's 11?
It's a fun-filled adventure.
In Ocean's 11, they're working together. In this movie, everyone's working against each other.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. This is somebody who wrote for IndieWire. They called it Delightful.
What's that person's name? We need to send this out.
No.
Eric Cohn. Eric Cohn.
Eric Cohn's he's a great critic. I agree with most of what he writes.
Yeah,
I mean,
so there you go.
What did we like? I think there was some good cinematography. There was, some eye candy of various sorts.
Yeah, the ending was eye candy, but it had no connection whatsoever.
Let's open it up here and bring in, let's see if John Vanko wants to share some thoughts with us. John Vanko.
Well, you can see him.
You guys are a bunch of hard asses. My God, that poor filmmaker. I hope he never hears this.
No, I doubt he will. But
wait till Earth comes out. No, just kidding.
John Vanko, what did you think?
No, I didn't like it either.
Yeah.
No, I got to say, there's a lot of movies that leave me confused. That's for sure. But this one was kind of over and beyond. Well, it was for all the reasons that you've all mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like such a simple.
It didn't land.
Now, I did like. I don't know. I haven't been watching, just listening here. So I don't know who was saying that they didn't like the whistling thing. That's the whole thing. That's the only thing that makes the movie bearable is the whistling thing. It's
an appreciation of the whistling thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I think it's just cheap to put the whole plot, around this thing that you don't really need. I mean, you could have come up with a different way to communicate, in my opinion.
I don't even think they
like a text message, like a burner phone and a text message.
They don't explore it as well as they could have, too.
Come on.
What?
Wait a minute.
Yes. All right.
Ellie.
Ellie, what did you think?
All right. First of all, I generally fall asleep with boring movies, and I didn't with this one.
You
Um,
didn't?
I did
I
not
did.
fall asleep. I mean, it was, yes, it was frustrating because I'm like, where are we in time now? But,
Right.
but I mean, that's my sense is that's, I mean, they chose to do it that way because it's a sense of you, I mean, when you start double crossing and triple crossing, you lose track of who you are and what's right and what's wrong. And nobody was redeemable
There were
in
no
any
good
way.
people. Yes.
No,
The guy at the end, he would have killed Gilda if she wasn't watching out for herself. I mean, there was the only redemptive thing is that she actually was willing to share the money with Christy at the end. But the whistling thing, I mean, I thought about it and I wasn't planning on actually jumping in, but
So good.
the whistling thing was really cool. And this idea of how do you this idea of communication and parsing out language and this the idea, I mean, it's the fact that they went to the Canary Islands to learn how to whistle and I think there's like this sort of idea of being in a cage, being a canary, being in a cage, being able to break out of that, where you have this post-communist society where it's not any more moral than it was under communism. And his mother was, I thought, a really interesting character. And of course she gave the money to the church. She was pissed off at her son because she thought that he was, that he was corrupt. And so she didn't want to have anything to do with it. So.
I mean, these are all really good points, Kelly, for sure. I just think the way they were used in the actual story, like in the plot of the film, as Erika said before, the actual whistling, how does it come? Yes, it's interesting, and it was interesting to the filmmaker. And yeah, everything that you said is vastly more interesting to listen to than how that was used as a device in the film. Like, what it really came down to was there was the very last scene when he's in the hospital and there's Gilda, and that was the one single time that it was used to communicate in any meaningful sense in the entire film.
Yeah.
That's true.
And that just felt cheap. It seemed so cheap. Like,
yeah, it's like you set up a whole film, you titled the whole film The Whistlers for this one single moment, and it just makes it feel like just false.
I will say
just
that
such a false device.
Making a comparison to Ocean's 11, it almost kind of works for me in a way on this whistling thing. Like, because Ocean's 11 is so cheeky and funny. Like, if they tried to make it funnier, then maybe the whistling would have been like, all right, I can go along with this. This is fun. This makes sense. Because a character in the team of the 11, one person's an acrobat and the other person, is a lie detector, whatever people's special characters are, like, that would have been cool. The whistler guy that everyone thinks is cool, not like the guy who beats him up. Like, he goes to Spain and the Spanish guy teaches him and then beats the crap out of him and tries to rape Gilda. Like, we don't like him. If we liked him, if they made that a little more funny, then I think that the whistling could have really worked.
Yeah, and the romance too is completely lost, right? Like, all we know is Gilda and what's the name again? Zolt? Gilda and Zolt, right?
Jolt.
They want to get together. That's all we know, but we never see them together. We never see
in a
chemistry
scene
or anything like that. And then at the end of the movie, we're also supposed to believe that Gilda and Christy have had this, these strong feelings for each other apparently through the whole movie. But I didn't feel like that was earned at all either. Like, none of the emotional payoffs. I mean,
she goes in with him to his apartment and goes to the length of really vigorously fucking this guy. And they didn't like that wasn't a thing, like that didn't open a door where they like talked afterwards or made it seem like maybe that was the beginning of feelings. It just seemed like that happened and she's like, forget about it. Forget about that.
Yeah, it just
Forget
felt
about what
like
happened
work.
in Bucharest.
It just felt
Yeah,
like work.
Well,
but if they're trying to convince us that they had feelings for each other, like have them look at each other with a little bit of interest after they've just had sex with each other.
Right, or
You don't know
that
how
whole
Romanians
time
have
they were in the
sex.
house together when he's
That might be how
screaming.
Romanians make love.
I know it could
that was
be.
at the beginning, though. She was. Yes, it was pretty vigorous. But no, if they didn't. She didn't have a connection with him then. I think it grew over time. But so I had a Romanian friend whose joke was, who was actually the sweetest person on the planet. He was this wacky artist guy. Lived in Erie for a short period of time, and he was very, very sweet, very romantic, but he said, oh, the Americans are all about business and the Germans are all about engineering, and the French, well, the French, they know romance, but what Romanians are world famous for? We're thieves.
We're thieves.
I get it.
Okay. We're gypsies.
I'd be curious what your friend thought of this film.
Yeah,
I don't know.
haven't heard from him for a while.
Yeah. I don't think of I think of, I know Romanians aren't Slavs, but I think of many Slavic people. Basically it's like you're not judged, like you don't, you look at life at how deeply you feel the pain of life. And it's not about, and they sort of bristle at Americans with, well, why do you always have to be so fucking happy?
Right.
Being happy. You're being very superficial if it's you, but and I thought of this as a very Eastern European movie in that regard.
Respect.
It's not trying to show you redemption. It's about sort of understanding the deeply messed up nature of humans.
That's all a really good point, for sure, as far as tone. But I would say still, as far as executing a film technically, that makes sense and,
Well,
and
yeah,
has...
I'm not gonna. You're right. It was playing hard to get the entire time.
Oh man.
Like
Yeah,
Soderbergh can have 11 different characters and changing locations every 5 seconds and have it be totally making sense, right? But in different hands, it's not such an easy thing to pull off. I think that
Lost in translation.
Yeah.
Like-
I don't think so. Story basics, I think, were missed.
Well,
Whether
there's
it
no
be
hero's
cultural-
journey, that's for sure.
No hero's journey. No.
Don't you guys think that this is probably one of these movies where the screenplay, or at least the treatment and the outline, probably were like it connected a lot of these things a lot more coherently than it actually ended up showing in the emulsion and stuff like that?
You're being too nice, sir.
It's possible, but it's a film. It's not a screenplay.
Yeah.
Stu, the Iggy Pop song is The Passenger.
Right. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Like
So-
the music was good, except at the end, all of a sudden they start crescendoing with a mix of the Four Seasons, Ride of the Valkyrie, all this stuff. They're just dropping like flies, and I was like, okay.
Are you talking
Almost
about
done.
in
Almost
Singapore?
done.
Singapore.
Did you notice the reference to Hitchcock a couple times? Did you notice?
Remind me.
I noticed one. It's blatant. It's in the hotel.
Oh yeah, right. The shower, the knife.
That
right.
is
Yeah.
absolutely a Hitchcock Direct.
Yeah, well, there were a couple of them too. I mean, like Mike was saying, because a lot of French film noir, even the stuff like the running down the alleys, that sort of thing, and just looking up at the tall buildings and what have you. But I'm going to pull the parachute on this one, folks. It's been a long day for me, so I'm going to sign off first here.
Okay.
Film under quarantine rocks the second week. Just stay tuned for next week. John, I'm sure you'll announce all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
You. Thanks for coming in strong.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. It's been good. We'll see you next week.
Later,
See ya.
Anybody else? Any last words before we call this a episode?
Good night.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good
Good
night.
night, John. Good night, Kelly.
Night, guys. Yeah. Well, I feel hopeful that as we move forward in this virtual theater, this new economy, this new way of consuming movies, that maybe we will have some better options in what the distributors are willing to show. I think putting too much trust in that didn't really serve us well this time around. But as we go forward, I think we'll be making really good picks. And if anything, like, this is a really good example for anyone who watches or listens to this later, or hears our commentary, that this is a good example of, not every movie is awesome, and you can absolutely have fun and learn picking apart something shitty, as opposed to just saying how wonderful something is all the time.
For sure.
All right.
That's my final comment.
Good. Anyone else? Jesse, Mike?
Pass on it.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I don't need to see it again.
There's so much great content out there today. There's no time for just mediocre content.
I would like to give a chance, to other foreign films that otherwise I wouldn't see. I don't think it's about that. I don't know how especially if you were reading reviews. Like, if I read a review that said a delightful Romanian version of Ocean's 11, I'd be like, sure, that sounds fun. So it's hard. You just don't know, especially from, an American journalist that you respect, to get that kind of review. It's really hard. It's hard to know.
Guys, art is subjective, so you're
Except
always
for all of us.
right. But yeah, this one I didn't watch ahead of time. Most of them I do watch ahead of time. You guys don't always agree with the ones that I like, so this is one of the rare ones that we didn't have too many good experiences with, but a lot of people did. I would say maybe fans of the director's previous films, if you were in love with Police Adjective, which I absolutely was not, maybe this one's right up your alley. Otherwise I would say to skip it. And Magnolia has a lot of good offerings. We're showing the next 2 weeks are their films as well. Slay the Dragon is next week, which is, right now it's my favorite documentary of the year. I actually just watched another documentary that we'll be programming in May that's ranks really high too. But Slay the Dragon is next week. That's the gerrymandering documentary, and we have a good panel for that. And then Once We're Brothers. Did I get the title right finally? Is in 2 weeks.
I don't know.
Is in 2 weeks. So we got two great films from Magnolia next, and I hope everyone will join us for those. Let's start spreading the word.
You got it.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to hit pause.